The word in English and the rest is in Italian, but I want to repeat the words from the responsorial psalm. I will sing a new song to the Lord because he has done marvels. And indeed, not just with me, but with all of us, my brother cardinals, as we celebrate this morning, I invite you to recognize the marvels that the Lord has done, the blessings that the Lord continues to pour out upon all of us. Through the ministry of Peter, you have called me to carry that cross and to be blessed with that mission. And I know I can rely on each and every one of you to walk with me as we continue as a church, as a community of friends of Jesus, as believers, to announce the good news, to announce the gospel. Tu sei il Cristo, il Figlio del Dio vivente. Con queste parole, Pietro, interrogato dal Maestro,
With these words,
assieme agli altri discepoli,
Peter, asked by the Master, together with his other disciples, about his faith in him, expresses the patrimony that the Church, through the apostolic succession, has preserved, deepened, and handed for over 2,000 years. Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, the only Savior, who alone reveals the face of the Father. In him, God, in order to make himself close and accessible to men and women, revealed himself to us in the trusting eyes of a child, in the lively mind of a young person, and in the mature features of a man, finally appearing to the disciples after the resurrection with his glorious body. He thus showed us a model of human holiness that we can all imitate, together with the promise of an eternal destiny that transcends all limits and abilities. Peter, in his response, understands both these things, the gift of God and the path to follow in order to allow himself to be changed by the gift. There are two inseparable aspects of salvation entrusted to the Church to be proclaimed for the good of the human race. Indeed, they are entrusted to us who were chosen by him before we were formed in our mother's womb, reborn in the waters of baptism, and surpassing our limits, and with no merit of our own, brought here and sent forth from here, so that the gospel may be proclaimed to every creature. In particular, God has called me by your election to succeed the Prince of the Apostles, and has entrusted this treasure to me so that with his help I may be his faithful administrator for the sake of the entire mystical body of the Church. He has done so in order that she may be ever more fully a city set on a hill, an ark of salvation, sailing from the waters of the history, and a beacon that illumines the dark nights. And this not so much through the magnificence of structures of grandeur, like these monuments among whom we find ourselves. Rather, he did this holiness for her members, for we are the people whom God has chosen as his own, so that we may declare the wonderful deeds of him who called us out of darkness. Peter, however, makes his profession of faith in his reply with a specific question. Who do people say the Son of Man is? Jesus asks. The question is not insignificant. It concerns an essential aspect of our ministry, namely the world in which we live with its limitations and its potential, its questions, and its convictions. Who do people say the Son of Man is? If we reflect on the scene that we are considering, we might find two possible answers which characterize two different attitudes. First, there is the world's response. Matthew tells us that this conversation between Jesus and his disciples takes place in the beautiful town of Caesarea Philippi, filled with luxurious palaces, set on a magnificent natural landscape at the foot of Mount Hermon. But it was also a place of cruel power plays and the scene of betrayals and infidelity. This setting speaks us of a world that considers Jesus as completely insignificant. At best, a person with unusual, striking ways of speaking and acting. And so, once his presence becomes irksome because of his demands for honesty and his stern moral requirements, this world will not hesitate to reject and eliminate him. Then there is the other possible response to Jesus' question, that of the ordinary people. For them, the Nazarene is not a charlatan, but an upright man, one who has courage, one who speaks well and says the right things, like other prophets in the history of Israel. That is why they follow him, at least for as long as they can do so without too much risk of inconvenience. Yet, to them, he is only a man, and therefore, in times of danger, during his passion, they too abandon him and depart disappointed. What is striking about these two attitudes is their relevance today. They embody motions that we could easily find on the lips of many men and women in our own time. Even if while essentially identical, they are expressed in different languages. Even today, there are many settings in which the Christian faith is considered absurd, meant for the weak and unintelligent, settings where other securities are preferred, like technology, money, success, power, or pleasure. These are contexts where it is not easy to preach the gospel and bear witness to its truth, where believers are mocked, opposed, despised, or at best tolerated and pitied. Yet, precisely for these reasons, they are the places where our missionary outreach is desperately needed. A lack of faith is often tragically accompanied by the loss of meaning in life, the neglect of mercy, appalling violation of human dignity, the crisis of the family, and so many other wounds that afflict our society. And these are not few. Today, there are also many settings where Jesus, although appreciated as a man, is reduced to a kind of a charismatic leader or a superman. This is true not only among believers, but also among many baptized Christians who thus end up living at this level in a state of practical atheism. This is the world that has been entrusted to us, a world in which Pope Francis taught us so many times we are called to bear witness to our joyful faith in Jesus, our Savior. Therefore, it is essential that we too Repeat with Peter, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." It is essential to do this, first of all, in our personal relationship with the Lord, in our commitment to a daily journey of conversion, therefore, to do so as a church, experiencing together our fidelity to the Lord and bringing the good news to all. I say this, first of all, to myself, as the successor of Peter, as I begin my mission as Bishop of Rome, and called in charity to the universal church, according to a well-known expression of St. Ignatius of Antioch, and called to preside in charity over the universal church. St. Ignatius, who was led in chains to the city, the place of impending sacrifice, wrote to the Christians, "Then I will truly be a disciple of Jesus when the world no longer sees my body." Ignatius was speaking about being devoured by the wild beasts in the arena, and so it happened. But his words applied more generally to an indispensable commitment to all those in the church who exercise the ministry of authority. It is the move aside so that Christ may remain, that we may make oneself small and he may be known and glorified, to spend oneself to the utmost so that all may have the opportunity to know and love him. May God grant me this grace today and always, throughout the loving intercession of Mary, Mother of the Church.
And that was the first public homily of our new Pope Leo XIV as Pope. And we continue with the Holy Mass and the Universal Prayer, or also known as the Prayer of the Faithful.